My name is Mr. Suda. I work actually for a company named Grasshopper. And thankfully, I got a request from Capcom's R&D 4 to make a game. That game is Killer7.
Grasshopper Manufacturer is my favorite video game company. Their CEO, Goichi Suda, is my favorite game designer. And in the summer of 2005, they released my favorite video game of all time, Killer7. Because of all these factors, you may be wondering why it's taken me over 10 years since I first started doing J-Reviews to finally do a video on Killer7. It's actually because of all these things that it's made it so difficult for me. I want to do my favorite game justice, to really make sure I hit every intricate point and describe in the most minute detail possible why it is that I believe Killer7 is a masterwork, not only as a game, but as a piece of art. This to me felt like a Herculean task. How on earth could I, a humble Jay, give such a perfect analytical presentation of such a special game without completely overlooking something significant, or worse yet, coming off as redundant compared to the multiple other video essays that already exist for the game? The answer is, I don't know if I can, and that's okay. I'm not going to let the fear of not doing a flawless review on my favorite video game stop me from giving it the praise it deserves any longer. And on the 20-year anniversary, or close to it, I'm going to do what I know I can do for sure. I'm going to tell you exactly why I love Killer7. So just how big of a Killer7 fan am I? Yeah, I mean, being a fan of something isn't necessarily something you can really measure out or compete with other people, but let's just say I really like this game. Without further ado, let's get into it. I want to begin this by putting you in the shoes of a younger Jay experiencing Killer7 for the first time, and not quite sure what to make of it at first. The truth is, I sort of picked the game up by complete chance. I had no real experience or knowledge with Grasshopper or Suda at the time. All I knew is that there was a soon-to-be released game coming out for the Wii called No More Heroes, which I was really excited for based on previews, because it was an incredibly rare M-rated Wii exclusive. Now I'm not saying that being M-rated automatically makes a game better, but at the time, the Wii had an extremely family-friendly focused library of games, and less eloquent critics would often accuse the console as being for babies. Like that jerk Billy from class used to always say. Well, guess what, Billy? That baby console you like to talk so much crap on is getting an exclusive, super violent, super adult M-rated game, where you get to like cut dudes' heads off, and yes, they do shoot fountains of blood too. So I bet you feel dumb. It may sound petty, but yes, this was more or less why a lot of people were excited about this game. Though to be fair, it also had its own distinct style to set it apart from stuff like Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty. It looked weird but interesting. While hypely waiting, I discovered that the same creator of this upcoming No More Heroes game actually released a previous title for the GameCube called Killer7. Now I may have seen some glimpses of this game on some G4 show like X-Play or something, but it wasn't something that I was really going out of my way to look into or to even play. I hadn't played any of their games yet, so there wasn't really much reason for me to get excited. I just thought, oh, that's cool. But it was around this time I was invited by some family to visit a flea market type place. A place that I would never end up going to again. And that place just happened to have a little game store inside of it, and inside of that game store, in the Nintendo GameCube section, I just happened to stumble upon a game I vaguely recognized called Killer7. I thought, hey, since I still have to wait several months for No More Heroes to come out, why don't I pick up their previous game so I can get a better idea of what I'm getting myself into? It's right in front of me after all. So, one quick transaction later, and I had a new game. Yeah, this is the actual receipt from that purchase on July 16th, 2007. Killer7's title card opening would be my introduction to the distinct stylish flair that is Suda and Grasshopper. It's so simple yet striking, and instead of just defaulting to your standard options and chapter screens, every little selection you make feels impactful. Then the game begins, and this is where young Jay almost immediately got lost. The game was strange. The dialogue didn't make any sense, the gameplay was unfamiliar. I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing exactly, just running around shooting at things, picking up the occasional object that I wasn't sure the relevancy to, but mostly encountering dead ends and getting blown up by the invisible laughing kamikaze enemies. On top of that, you're dropped into the middle of story events with little to no context on exactly what's going on, or even anything about the world you're in, so it's hard to even find something to grab onto to motivate yourself to keep going. After some failed attempts to make much progress, young Jay was ready to quit. You wanna know why I didn't? $15. I had spent 15 of my precious American dollaroos on this game. It was probably all the money I even had at the time. Back then, I only ever really got new games when it was my birthday or Christmas or something like that. So this was a pretty big purchase for me. I said, you know what, if I just spent all my money on a game, I should at least beat the first level. So, I got back to it. To give the game a little more credit, there is a bit more context in the manual, including info on the different characters, their goals, and even some tips on how to play the game better. The Killer7 is a team of assassins led by the elderly Harmon Smith, who leaves most of the footwork to his 7 subordinates. There's Dan Smith, a hot-headed badass with a powerful revolver, Kaede Smith, the sardonic female member of the group who utilizes a scoped pistol, Con Smith, a blind teenager who uses dual pistols, Coyote Smith, an ex-petty thief who has his own custom revolver, Kevin Smith, an albinic mute who specializes in knives, yes, I swear that's his actual name, and Mask the Smith, a retired luchador who wields devastating dual grenade launchers. The team is rounded off with Garcian Smith, whose role in the group is more of a liaison, whether it be receiving orders from Harmon, mission briefs from government contact Christopher Mills, or just general communication with any of the less violent individuals that the team may encounter during their missions. What really makes this team special, though, are the bizarre and supernatural abilities that each member can activate when needed. Dan has an anime-style charge shot that can annihilate stronger enemies in a single blast. Kaede has the ability to manipulate blood to either reveal secrets or break barriers. Khan can run at blistering speeds and has super hearing. Coyote can unlock any padlock he comes across and has a superhuman vertical leap. Kevin can become invisible and intangible for a limited time. And Mask, well, he's basically a walking tank. And he can do wrestling moves, which is just cool. Garcian has perhaps the most important special ability in that he can resurrect any teammate by returning to the location where they died. For the most part, this is the only time you'll actually be playing as Garcian, but it's very important that you take it seriously since he's only equipped with a weak 5 bullet capacity silenced pistol, and you can't resurrect Garcian since that's his job. So if he dies, then it's truly game over. What's really cool is that you're able to swap between most of these personas at any time via the pause menu, allowing you to make use of any of their abilities at any time, so long as they're not currently out of commission. Garcian is the only one of the main 7 that you cannot swap between normally. Instead, you can only change to him or off of him when using the TV located in one of the Harmon rooms, several of which can be usually found in whatever level you're on. These same TVs can be used to power up the stats of the other characters, and sometimes allow you to save your game as well. There's even an area here where you can get more tips and info, something that a younger me apparently didn't really bother checking out. So what's going on during this opening mission exactly? Well, Christopher Mills has sent Garcian to an apartment complex to destroy the Heaven Smile headquarters and capture the chief alive, without much more info than that. What we do know is that we get to play as 7 hardcore assassins wrapped into one, who each have their own unique weapons and abilities. This sounds pretty awesome, but how does the game play exactly? Well, what can I compare it to? Oh wait, I can't. This game doesn't play like anything else I've ever come across since the 20 years that this game's existed. A starting descriptor some people go with is to call the game on the rails. But it's not on the rails like an arcade shooter where you're automatically moved from place to place as you take out enemies. It's a manually controlled on the rails with a degree of exploration. Your character has a set path that they're freely able to run back and forth on. Assuming you're playing with the GameCube controller, you hold A to move forward, while B is used to turn around. The exploration comes from these forks in the road that you run into, which allows you to branch off into whichever direction you choose. There are also often objects or people of interest that you can examine or talk to all along the way. The most recurring of these people include your loyal servant Uwazaru, the snarky but informative ex-target Travis, and Susie, an angsty young woman who is literally just a head. The way the combat works is the camera changes to a first-person perspective depending on which way you're facing, which allows you to fire at enemies from a standing position. The aiming, firing speed, and even recoil varies depending on which persona you're currently using. The enemies in question are these demon-esque creatures called Heaven's Smile, who attack by literally suicide bombing you. The basic smile types become familiar quickly, but they come in an increasingly large variety as the game goes on. Aside from the running and the gunning, you also occasionally find yourself on a static pre-rendered screen to solve a puzzle. The gameplay is admittedly unorthodox and feels awkward at first, but it actually works really well and becomes satisfying once you get the hang of it. I can't say that I mastered things quickly back then, but after enough effort I was able to make my way to something called the Vinculum Gate. As it so happens, the usual requirement for completing missions is collecting these things called soul shells, which are required to pay a toll into the final areas. Why are we suddenly passing through a dilapidated coliseum that inexplicably exists in the middle of the apartment building we were just in? Young Jay had no idea, but that's okay, because he had finally made it to what appeared to be a boss fight. A boss fight with an anime girl angel who looks really out of place compared to everyone else we've seen so far. The boss fight here is pretty simple, but a nice change of pace, and the cutscenes, while still confusing, were beginning to get more and more intriguing. Little did I know, this next part would change my life forever. We're forcefully changed into Harmon, who feels amusingly slow compared to the rest of the team. But don't be fooled, this old man wields a massive rifle with tank-piercing rounds, so you know when he shows up, he means business. As it so happens, he's here to meet with an old friend/enemy of his named Kun Lan, who is the main antagonist of the game, and probably one of the greatest video game villains ever. He's maniacal, genocidal, dubious, but somehow charming at the same time. And he's the one creating the Heaven's Smile that have been causing all this trouble. So as nice of a reunion as this has been, we unfortunately have to take this guy down. Okay, a tank-piercing rifle versus one man with a glowing hand may seem a bit overkill, but just watch how this plays out. Yes, that really just happened. You didn't imagine it, I didn't edit the footage or glitch the game out in any way. I shot at him, he caught the bullet, and then flew across the city, landing onto the Seattle Space Needle. Then he gives Harmon a speech about how the modern world is so small it could be controlled by an iPhone or something, while badass music is playing, and he laughs hysterically, his voice transitioning to that of the Heaven's Smile itself as the camera quickly pulls out and hard cuts to the end of the chapter. This was it. This was the moment I fell unconditionally in love with this game. I had never seen anything like this before. I barely had any idea what was even going on, but I had to see what was going to happen next. All bets were off. So that's my story of how I went from nearly dropping the game on the very first level to it becoming one of my favorite games of all time. Just a retelling of my personal experience. I already said that this game is too important for me to even attempt to go full video essay on, and I don't want to go over every single scene in detail because I want people to be able to experience the game for themselves if they want to. So instead, I'm just going to tell you a bunch of additional reasons why I love it. The art style is timeless. Since the game is largely textureless and opts instead for a stylized surrealism with lots of striking colors, the game actually translates better in high resolution than many other games of the same era whose visual detail was very impressive at the time, but now feel a lot more dated. The on-the-rails aspect of the game allows for creative cinematography that you wouldn't normally see in most games. Similar to how older tank control titles like Resident Evil or Silent Hill would offer little to no camera control with the benefit of having more artistic camera angles, Killer7 takes this to the next level, with perspectives that not only look beautiful, but avoid the danger of getting the player lost since aiming always throws you into a first-person's perspective, and crossroads are easily navigated at designated areas regardless of where you are on screen. I also have to praise the cinematography and direction of the cutscenes themselves, which are expertly edited together with the game's standout soundtrack developed by Masafumi Takada and his frequent musical partner Jun Fukuda. And speaking of cutscenes, they aren't all done in engine. The game actually employs a lot of 2D animated cutscenes as well, in both anime and also a more Western style of animation, depending on which section of the game you're in. I love how much thought and care is put into all the differences between each playable character, rather than just giving them all generic movement. I talked about how the game just throws new players into the fray without much context, leaving them confused and struggling to really follow much during the first mission, and how that made it difficult for me to get into the game at first. But I think in retrospect, this was very much done on purpose and to good effect. Evidence of that being that the game immediately goes on to provide context of the game's world start of the next mission, giving you a better idea of how the Killer7 and the Heaven Smile fit into it all. It was upon my immediate second playthrough where I was able to catch on to way more things during the first mission that I really understood the genius of having the players start blind. There's so much being thrown at you, these ethereal people known as remnant psyches that seem to follow you wherever you go, saying things that at first glance appear to be complete gibberish much of the time. These pigeon carrier messages that are directed to someone that doesn't seem to exist. These elemental rings that the game seems to insist that you're having returned to you rather than discovering them for the first time. There's so much to take in that it's hard to really know what actually means something. So on subsequent playthroughs, you start to notice these little details have a lot more rhyme and reason to them than you might have thought before. The game isn't just being random or weird, although it does feel random and weird a lot of the time. There's actually a ton of thought put into just about everything you see. I don't want to go into too many of these, but one great example is the Colosseum, which you pass through towards the end of every chapter. At first it seems like a nonsensical place that doesn't really have a reason to exist, but I believe this area is a real tangible interdimensional space that the Smiths have access to, which allow them to travel long distances almost instantly. Each door of the Colosseum seems to lead somewhere else, but there's that one opening in the very middle that seems to entice you to want to enter since the very first mission. But you always seem to avoid it no matter how many times you revisit this place. I mean, just look at the specific path the game takes you on towards the very end of everything when you think, hey, maybe you'll finally get to see what's in that middle door. They didn't have to do that. It's like the game is trolling you. I love the Heaven Smile as enemies. They're just the perfect amount of intimidating horror and endearing goofy. They also come in such a large and interesting variety that are both uniform yet diverse that it scratches the same part of my lizard brain that would get excited at the concept of collecting something like Mighty Beans or Crazy Bones. The official strategy guide is actually one of my favorite Killer7 related materials I have just because it has a bunch of pages dedicated to every single smile in the game. I love this kind of thing. I love the presentation. Every step of the game feels like an event that prepares you for what's to come, or gives you a moment to breathe and digest what just happened. Each mission beginning with a silhouette of your next target that you have to shoot to begin, and then a differently colored full moon preceding the first cutscene of the mission. The missions themselves ending with your total smile extermination count, and then giving you a meaningful quote relating to smiles. Spending time at Garcian's trailer house between each chapters, you're taunted with these 2 forbidden doors in the back that are making some really wild sounds. You don't even know which door the noises are coming from, but it really makes you want to know what's going on behind each of them. I can't even go into much detail about this, but the game also has this quirk where it feels like it's ending, but then it's not really quite the end, but you're really hyped that it's not the end because you don't want it to end anyway. So it's like finding an extra Christmas present the day after Christmas, but then you're like, wait, this isn't the end? Okay, what's happening now? That probably doesn't make any sense, but I don't want to spoil too much, so I should really wrap this up soon. I do have to point out that due to personal convenience, many of the cutscenes in this video are from the more recent PC port, which presents the game in a 16:9 aspect ratio rather than the GameCube's original 4:3. While I think the PC port is pretty good overall, aside from some minor errors here and there, and I think the new aspect ratio works pretty well during the gameplay, my biggest gripe with it is how the cutscenes are presented in an extra wide screen, which reveals more of the image than initially intended. The game's cutscenes were already originally shown in a letterboxed format, which essentially puts them in a 16:9 ratio. So I always figured if the game ever had a modern port, that they could just increase the size of that screen since it would fill out almost perfectly. Instead, by deciding to extend the sides of the screen, this undermines the artistic vision of the original cutscenes. So in something like the iconic meeting between Harmon and Kunlan, 2 characters who are accurately described as yin and yang to each other, light and dark, east and west, etc. In this scene, you can see how their faces are purposefully cut in half, as if to symbolize their contentious yet ultimately linked relationship to one another. In the port, the widened camera takes this cool visual away by showing too much. I still think the port is a decent way to play the game, and there is apparently even an option to force the game into 4:3, but I do personally think the GameCube version is still the best overall. Anyway, I have no idea if this video really makes any sense, or if I properly articulated what this game means to me. I've honestly had an extremely difficult time even writing the script for this, which I technically started 2 years ago, by the way, when I first tried to get this out in time for the 10-year anniversary of J Reviews, but I kept putting it off because, I don't know. I love this game, and if you talk to me in person, I'm sure I could tell you so many more reasons why I love it. But when I actually sit down to put it into words, I get writer's paralysis. Here's a fun fact. In 2019, I bought a Nintendo Switch just to play Travis Strikes Again because I found out Killer7 made a cameo during the game's opening. I didn't buy it for the new Zelda, I didn't even buy it to play the new No More Heroes, although I did end up loving TSA, no. I bought a brand new game console for a single cutscene. That's how hype I am about this, and how excited it makes me when I'm able to share it with anyone new who doesn't know about it. Maybe you could consider checking it out. As for me, I'm sure I missed a lot of things I would have wanted to talk about, or maybe I could have organized this better, or even had some elaborate skits to show my enthusiasm, but the truth is I was never going to be completely happy with my own review of this game. So let's just bite the bullet and put out what I can. This is my Killer7 review.